Good morning. It's Monday, November 10th. I'm Phil Streible, Chief Market Strategist at Blue Line Futures. So I published a silver option trading strategy on Kitco over the weekend. I also wrote a weekly outlook highlighting the top three things to watch. In the outlook, I shared my perspective on gold, silver, the S&P 500, the US dollar, and interest rates. For silver, we also run a price prediction model for the week ahead. So if you'd like to view this content, please register for the chart pack using the link in the description below. So looking at today's top story here, obviously the US government shutdown set to end here as a record-long shutdown approaches its conclusion. A group of 8 Democrats broke their ranks with their party on Sunday to vote with Republicans. This helped advance the bill to reopen the government after 40 days of the shutdown. So the reaction, green across the screen here. So you get a sense of relief. You also get some data and some clarity on the state of the economy. The Fed can finally do its job. And then finally, the corporate blackout period is ending with earnings season mostly behind us here, allowing companies to buy back their stocks. And that should act as a bullish tailwind here coming into the end of the year. So futures, they do point to a robust gain here with optimism of this government shutdown ending very soon here. And you also have some easing tensions between U.S. and China and Trump's bid to appeal a cash-strapped Americans with this tariff dividend. So you look at the S&P 500 up just under about 1% at 6811. You have the NASDAQ up just under 1.5% at 25,510. The Russell is also pushing up about 1%, and the FANG stocks are up about 1.5%. So you look at the precious metals markets because you have gold jumping about 2% here, and it's really up here on the expectations of further interest rate cuts in December after U.S. data is going to show a surge in October layoffs here and weakening consumer sentiment. So remember, we are up about 2% here. It's the highest level in more than 2 weeks. The 52-week high is 43.36. Gold volatility continues to collapse down to about that 20 level. So your key level of support here, psychological support, obviously going to be the 4,000 mark. The futures contracts did jump up here above that level at 4,004, and there was a sense of complacency all last week just surrounding that level. So that old resistance, now new support again. You go below that, it's going to be down at 39.96 and 39.01. So your minor resistance point is going to be this 4,100. We got up to 40.95.10 in the overnight session. If we can clear through 4,100, perhaps open up the next session stronger here, it opens up a potential break of a retest of that all-time high. The 14-day average true range is about $96. And you look at the silver market, that's fast approaching the $50 level, sitting at 49.80 last. That's up about 3.5%. The high in the overnight session, 49.94. The low, 48.23. So you got about a $1.60 range in the overnight. You look at the 14-day average true range sitting at about $1.72. So that key level of resistance that I was watching was at 49.72 level. So we'll want to see that market close above that level because it could advance through that 50 and then potentially take another run for those all-time highs at 53.02. So you do have stochastics rising. DMI plus is over DMI minus. And then you look at the copper market here, up about 8 cents. That's up 1.6%. Recapturing $5, sitting at 5.03 last. You look at a shifting to the equity markets here for the moment. UBS, they came out with their forecast for next year, citing the S&P 500 could reach 7,500 with strong earnings growth, signaling about an 11% upside move from here. You have Besant saying that Trump suggested on Sunday on a media post that U.S. Americans may receive a tariff dividend here of at least $2,000, and that helped also fuel this potential rally. U.S. and China, they suspended some support fees. Try to get that out here. I'm a little bit under the weather. So on each other's ships here for 1 year and pause these probes on these maritime practices. So you're seeing much more normalized relations between U.S. and China, and that's helping fuel a lot of these other outside markets that really react to those different tensions between U.S. and China and some of the restrictions that we're seeing. So you look at the CME's Fed Watch tool, hasn't caught up yet. It's got very little reaction here. So the markets are now still seeing a 64.9% probability the Fed cuts rates 25 basis points in December. You look at the poly market now, that's jumping. That's the betting market, up to 72% chance that the Fed cuts 25 basis points. You'll get the dollar index is slightly higher at 99.51. That's up just about 4 ticks here. You get the euro currency under some pressure. And then you get 10-year treasury yields. Those are jumping up to 4.14%. So you get a little bit of pressure on the bonds and the 10-year notes here. That's been an area that I've been looking at as I believe that interest rates will continue to come back down below that 4% mark. It just may take a little bit of time to do so and take some of the data coming out in order to confirm that. So you look at the November VIX futures, those really collapsed here. Down at 1914, that's down about 80 ticks here. And then Bitcoin volatility continues with futures up about $2,500, back over 106,570. It retested the 107,000 mark, up about 2.5% here. That 14-day average true range on Bitcoin is right around $4,700. You go over to Europe and Asia, those European stocks, they climbed. Europe stocks 600 on track for its biggest gain here since July. You got Asian stocks also rising with the MSCI Asia Pacific Index up 1%. You do have 2 central bankers. They are going to be talking here today at about 7:30 a.m. Central Time and 8:45. And you got no significant economic releases. However, if you do get the research that I put out, there's a proposal of when all the delayed data will come out, and I'm going to send that out in the Metal's Edge here. That'll be one of the top things to look at here, and those will be all the checklists that I'll be looking for: the CPI, the jobs data, and things like that. So you get to the earnings front here. Out of the 453 of the S&P 500 companies that have reported so far, you got an 82% have managed to beat the analyst forecast, 15% have mixed. So you get to the ETF flows here. The exchange-traded funds across the board last week had reduced their holdings here. It doesn't matter if it's platinum, palladium, gold, silver, they reduced it all. So you look at the gold market, up 17% though, because it did jump on Friday, starting to move back up here, and it's up at 97.2 million ounces. So total gold held by ETFs rose about 17%. They added 150,000 ounces. You look at silver, they cut about 791,000. We'll see how that plays out once we cross over that $50 mark if we do so, which I believe that we will. So if you have any questions, futures option trading, you'd love to get an account open with us, you want to put on that silver play that I outlined, you want to get some of our research, if you want to trade any of these other outside markets as well, we're very active in everything from the agricultural markets to the energy front. Crude oil futures dipping back below that $60 mark. That's one that I've been bearish on. Many clients are playing the downside of it, as I believe that oil prices will start to re-threaten $57 and $56 here and test that previous support level that we've seen before. Or if you like to play the cryptocurrencies here on a more leveraged scale here with tighter bid offers than what you see on things like Coinbase and Robinhood, they just rip you off with the bid offer spreads here, with it being like $1,000 on Bitcoin specifically. So if you got any questions, shoot an email, info@bluelinefutures.com. Remember that futures and option trading does involve risk of loss, may not be suitable to all investors. Good luck, good trading.